Thank you, Jeff. Am I on this side?
You're on that
side?
You're on that side, and we're gonna just go right into this. You got the questions, right, that I sent you? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, so
I got them, but I didn't read them.
So as I looked at Joy and I went down to meet Freda and see her place last week, and I don't think there's gonna be any trouble interviewing this lady. As we were leaving, I said, I'm going to have quite a challenge tonight because I think you and I could probably sit and talk for hours upon hours. So, okay, so let's just get into this. So the first question that I had on the list that you've read and prepared for, right?
Yeah, right.
Is give us a brief history of your startup story.
Brief?
Brief. We'll start there.
Well, my name is Freda Sojka, and I started Simply Soothing in 2003 in downtown Muscatine. So that was the beginning of it.
Okay.
I've worked at Monsanto for several years, kind of tired of working for corporate chemical company, and decided I wanted to try something different. So I actually started it and worked for about a year. We opened a store without any preparation and went broke in about 4 months. So shut it down, moved back home, moved it into our basement, and then we ended up being contacted by a cosmetics company out of Chicago that had tried our shea cream or something comparable to it, and we started making shea cream for her. So we moved out of the basement and got started making other products. So we make a lot of different products, a lot of products that are good products but didn't take off like Bug Soother did. And so in 2008, the year of the flooding, I wanted to create something that without DEET for my 5-month-old grandson, and basically threw some stuff together. And that's just about the truth. In the very beginning, having no idea what I was doing, had no idea it would take off the way it did. You know, and we were in shock probably the first 2 years, making up little tiny batches and running out, making up more tiny batches and running out. And eventually thought, you know what, I think this is a business, and made some decisions in.
So what was a milestone or something that when you finally had that, I think this is a business?
Yeah, I tell this story a lot because Jim and I were in Arizona in the winter, and you know, we're older. You might be surprised by that, but we're retirement age. You know? So we were getting ready to retire. And everybody kept saying, you need to do this, you need to do this. This stuff is incredible. And we kept saying, well, do we want to do it? Do we want to work that hard? So we were in Arizona, and I blame it on our friend Mike Creedon, because I said it caught us off guard, because we said, you know what, maybe we ought to give this a shot. And that's kind of how it started. You know, we bought a building then that had been flooded out, and we got our first meeting with the distributor up in Wisconsin that ordered some pallets of Bug Soother before we really had a logo completely figured out, and made a lot of changes.
So about how many bottles of Bug Soother had you been selling at that point before this distributor bought a pallet load?
I think at that we had maybe sold, I don't know, do you remember, Jim? It seems like a long time ago, although it really hasn't been. It was probably...
We sold 700 bottles down there at Wapello.
In a grocery store at that time, which was unheard of. You know, the guy actually came to us and he said, this is incredible, you need to do something with this. And he'd been involved in grocery stores and changed. And he said, that's very unusual for a bug repellent to do that. And since then, they've sold thousands of bottles.
So the distributor, you said Wisconsin?
Wisconsin.
Had they gotten wind of it,
No.
Bug Soother, from the store in Wapello?
No.
No?
He actually had a friend that got it, this manager in Wapello that set us up with that distributor. And the guy had a cold, and we drove into Wisconsin. It was freezing cold that winter, and they're not excited about bug repellent. You know, that's been our experience with most buyers, because that's not a big turnover big money for them. And so he was pretty irritated, and it was on a Friday, and we got in there, and by the time we were done, the guy gave us a tour of the warehouse, and he became our believer. I mean, he was the first guy that gave us a chance. Those buyers turn over constantly. That guy eventually left, and then we had a struggle with him, but he gave us a shot. He said, and he kind of coached us into how to handle that first. He suggested how we make a case. He suggested, because we didn't even have cases at that point. We didn't have green bottles, did we? Probably not.
So you
quick
had
learning.
an order for a pallet load?
Yeah, 2 pallets,
2
I think.
pallets. How many, at least in today's bottles, how many bottles of bug spray?
I had to ask
Bug
him
Soother
because I know I'm so far away from that.
3,500.
About 3,500
3,500, so you had.
on a
you had-
pallet, so
you had
about
an order for
7,000.
7,000. And previously it sold 700 in a local store.
Yeah.
No logo, no
No,
cartons.
no.
No idea what you're gonna do. So,
I found a lady to do the label that had done the graphic design that was cheap, and a good friend of mine's friend, which we did that a lot in the beginning. We found a lot of friends that weren't real experienced in what they were doing. And so she made us and actually created that logo, which is stood time. It's our logo, you know, and actually it's the same bottle. We've not changed the bottle yet, but she didn't realize that a barcode reads the dark bars. So, you know, we green bottle, white, you know, the white lettering on it, because it was cheaper if you only had one color. It's the reason it was, you know, everybody's asked me, what's all these, you know, how'd you ever come up with that? Mostly it was by accident, mostly because I need, you know, we didn't want to pay for 2 colors. But the barcode was white. So we had, that time we printed up 30,000 bottles, I think. And none of the barcodes worked. You know, we found that out later, and somebody said, these barcodes aren't working, and struggles, a lot of struggles in the beginning.
So well, tell us about some of those. This order for 7,000 bottles of bug spray, were you still formulating and building in your kitchen, or where?
In the basement of a store downtown. So we made it out of the basement, and we didn't have a fork truck or any way to get it out. We had to hand crank it out, borrow the grocery store's fork truck to load it on the truck, and had a bunch of friends that came in and helped us fill those bottles. But I was reformulating, just up until shortly. I can't even remember how close that was to that. Those are rough times, you know. We look back on that and go, why did we even do that? You know, why didn't we give up? But we believed in it, you know. I believed in it. Jim was pretty skeptical for a while, but so I was still reformulating, and I knew, because it's a scent that repels, but I found out, like I said, there's hundreds of stories of what I found out. I had created a body spray that I put essential oils in. So I was selling it as a body spray. Well, the minute you put repel or imply that it repels an insect, then it becomes a pesticide in the eyes of the government. I found that out about the time that order was going out. So I had to get it EPA exempted, which meant I had to formulate it to their specifications. But we sent bottles down to Florida to some retired golfers and asked them to test it out for us. And they said, yeah, it works great. So the order went out the door.
So EPA, they just come knocking on your door?
No, they never. No. They're overwhelmed. They're not going to find you. Well, I should say. Oh, forget that. Put that off of there. They're overwhelmed. But it's EPA exempted, and there's a special, and it's a fairly new law. It went into effect, like I think in 1996, that it makes it a minimum risk pesticide. But you have to follow their guidelines, and then they exempt it. So we got through all that. It did fine. And then later on, I found out you have to additionally register it in every state, and they can have additional requirements. It's not a standard.
Right. You were telling us about that.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
So,
it was a struggle.
You mentioned you have to register it as a pesticide in every state. Each state has different regulations. So how do you manage that?
Sleepless nights. I mean, in the beginning, it took me several months to get through that, because it's handled by different heads in different states. So sometimes it's a Department of Agriculture, sometimes it's a college, sometimes it's all different, and all their standards. Well, according to EPA, it has to be at least as up to their standards and then can be additional. So, and a lot of states, they just stamped it and passed it. I mean, they didn't want to mess with it. Is kind of my thought, because they're understaffed, you know, they've got a lot of stuff going on. It was created because a natural pesticide is so different than a pesticide. You know, it's such a different animal. So we've gotten through most of that. I think we're registered in 45 of the 50 states. 6 of them we're going to have to reformulate to get it registered. So we're working on that.
So do you have a little bit different formulation for each state?
No, it's all the same.
It's all the same, but it will hit all the requirements.
It'll hit all the requirements.
Okay, so this Bug Soother was created in 2008. So we're talking 2008, 2009, those early days. How big was your company at that time?
I think there was 2 of us. Oh, 3? Were you counted as one? That's my husband, Jim, so if you get that. Very small, very, very small.
And where are you now? What do you look like today?
We're about 12 full-time employees. We get up to maybe around 20 or maybe 25 in the summer, you know, when it's really busy. We made the decision last year because for 2 years we sold out faster than we could make it fast, but we couldn't buy the bottles and we couldn't get the bottles printed. So we ended up making the decision last year, if we're going to keep good people, we're going to have to go to year-round production. So we did that last year. Made a lot of bottles. We did not run out this year. We've had plenty of bottles. We kind of overhit it a little bit. And the bugs didn't materialize as much. But one of my goals, and this is, you know, we were kind of talking a little bit earlier, but there's values you can establish, you know, as who we are, you know, and the values that are real important to me is using local people, using local. Very, very little of our product is created outside the USA, and that's been a goal of mine. The only thing we were held back on, the essential oils aren't made in the United States, so we have to import them. But the sprayers, I couldn't find them made in the USA because they were Indonesia, Mexico, and we found a company in Illinois. So we're like, yes, you know. We employ local people. You know, we do everything. We start out in a radius as close to our building as we can get. You know, we start out citywide, then we go out countywide. And if we can't find what we need at countywide, we go out statewide, and we go out Midwest. We make some deliberate decisions around that because we're trying to support, you know, that's a big part of what we want to do is we want to bring small businesses, you know. We want to employ people. We want to give people an opportunity, and I think we were talking about that. You know, some of the people we employ have had struggles in their life, you know, and we give them a shot. You know, this is what, you know, we've got boundaries, but it's like, we believe in you. You know, you believe in us, we believe in you. So a lot of our employees may not be so traditional, like in some companies maybe, but they believe they'll do anything for us. You know, and they're quick to learn, and they jump in and they figure it out because it's small business. You got to move fast. You know, you wear many hats.
As you're saying that reminded me of my dad. My dad owned small businesses and was always that kind of employer. So, you talked about, you know, your corporate job for many, many years. Do you have in your roots, in your background, small business and startup?
Yeah, I do. My dad was born and raised, my folks both were out of the Ozark Mountains, and Dad was born into pretty extreme poverty. Moved up here to Iowa years ago and started businesses, and they were dairy farmers, and they had a successful supper club at one time called Kingsbury Inn down in Fredonia. So he was a risk taker. I mean, he would work, you know, he would get in there and he'd try things and he'd work, even because a lot of times starting a business, and I think if anybody's familiar with that, the people closest to you, it's sometimes difficult for them to support it because it's a big risk to them. You know, it's their food, you know, it's their money that you're trying to spend. So,
Tell us the story you mentioned the other day about when you started your store in downtown Muscatine, that you said you were open for 4 months and went broke. But you were telling us when we came to visit why you did that. What was the real?
Oh,
the-
about starting a business with my daughter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd worked with my folks at the Kingsbury, and I loved working with my folks. You know, I loved, especially my mom. And so that was kind of what I wanted to do, too, was to start a business with my daughter. So we actually have 3 of our 4 kids that work for us now, which gets interesting, you know, having that much family. But nieces and nephews, and, I mean, we employ a lot of family.
Yeah, that's what I saw on your website. Okay, so, and Jim came in at one point when we were down at your place, and he said something about, you called him the newest employee or something like that, and he says, I'm not an employee, so. I guess talk about, because you were telling me that yeah, he's been alongside you all this time and supported. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, what's his relationship with this whole startup journey that you've been on?
Well, he's a bridge builder by trade. He's built hundreds of bridges across Iowa, and he was actually the breadwinner when I took an early out from Monsanto, because I took a early retirement, so I had some cash from that. But, you know, in the struggles of the early days, he kept working. You know, at one time he was going to retire, and then the business needed his money and his income, so he actually went back to work again when he really didn't want to. But he's taken an interest in it, and that's been good for us. You know, we've been asked a lot of times, what's it like working husband and wife together? Because I worked a swing shift at Monsanto for a lot of years, and he traveled with the bridges, so we didn't see each other much. And then we started seeing each other a lot. You know? So that's you got to learn how to work together. You know, he'd come off as a superintendent of bridges, and this was my company, and it was hard to determine, okay, who's the boss here? So we mostly we go to a truce, you know, on most things, you know, for the most part, you know. But it's been an interesting ride. It's been something that we've been able to do together, and since he officially retired from we used to say our paying jobs is how we used to put it, because I said I retired at $26 an hour and went to -10, you know, for the first few years.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. That's a good question. Why would you do that?
Why do you keep doing it?
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It gets in your blood, too. I mean, it's just the challenges.
Okay, so what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've overcome, and what challenges do you still face that you still need to overcome?
Well, probably some of the biggest one was trying to figure out how to meet production, you know, because we were blessed to be on a high customer demand, which wasn't created with any marketing whatsoever. It's grassroots. We gave out a lot of samples, you know, and actually he and I got out and peddled it at one time. We'd go to camping shows up in Wisconsin and Minnesota in winter. It's like, you know, selling ice to Eskimos is exactly how it is, because they don't even want to sample. You know, he would chase them. We had campers set up across from us at one of them, and there was the backside of the camper, and we laughed because they'd take such a wide, you know, trying to get around us, because he was holding that bottle of Bug Soother, that they studied the basement of that camper. You know, we saw hundreds of people going through looking at the under part of this camper.
You couldn't even give it away.
Could not give it away. And that was probably 2012 or 13. Maybe 2013. Yeah, that was the year it took off, which the people were spending. Hy-Vee was selling those little bottles we were giving away for $3, and driving all the way down from far away just to load up their cars to go sell those little bottles. We said we couldn't even get people to take them, you know, this winter. So that was the challenge, is how do you get started? You know, one of the things that we're still challenged with is sitting on a bottle where on a shelf and nobody's heard of it. You know, how do you compete? You know, because they can't smell it if it's sitting on that shelf. So in the early days, that was kind of, but we went around, decided to go to golf courses, and we went around that spring and went to golf courses, and we just gave them bottles and said, try this. Oh, no, we use such and such. We use, Absorbium Junior, lots of, we said, no, just try it. Just try it. Looking back over that, because I get asked a lot, okay, what was your marketing? How did you guys do this, Because we didn't bring any outside sources in for marketing in the early days, but those golf courses would use it when the bugs were bad, and that was such a visual thing, and we think that helped, a lot. And then the other thing, we had it at ball games a lot, so there's a lot of stories of people passing it through the stands and coming back down with an empty bottle. So our challenge now is how do we recreate this in the Midwest? Because we got hit this year with less bugs, and we forecasted for the sales, the growth that we had been having. So we forecasted for that and then made according to that. And then the lack of bugs in the Midwest really affected it. People were still buying it, but they didn't need it as bad, and the gnat season passed over. It skipped this year, which wasn't what we were figuring on happening. So, and I've said that for the last 3 years, we have to be bigger than the Midwest. We can't be dependent on the Midwest's fickle weather, or whether there's going to be bugs. So we went on a trade mission with Iowa 2 years ago. Like I said, our lives pass so fast. Last week seems like several years ago, but went to Panama and Colombia and found a lot of interest in those countries. But my challenge, and still is trying to interpret those regulations, those massive amounts of, all the paperwork that is just horrendous. So we finally hired a company that's going to handle that for us, because we have a lot of interest from all over the world. There's a company that's been contacting us. We met at a trade show from Saudi Arabia, and they have 170 pharmacies, 62 hospitals. I mean, it's a huge, huge company. And if we could get through the paperwork and get the product over there, it would be really good for us, because they're definitely dry and different season over there. So
what have you done to tackle your production challenge?
we got that figured out. We started, and this is how our life works. I mean, a lot of it's been through good people coming to us and just saying, I want to help you. Let me take a look at that. Maybe I could help you with that. And that's kind of how the production grew. We were making it in smaller than a 5-gallon bucket at one time. I can't remember how long ago that was. Went to a 5-gallon bucket. Jim had come up with a brilliant idea, because you had to keep stirring it because it settles out. And so he had a drill rigged up with a little paddle on it, and every once in a while he would stir up that 5-gallon bucket, but he couldn't see when the level was going down, so he got a fish aquarium. And he had a 30-gallon fish aquarium that was his holding tank, and he was pretty proud of that, because then he could see it and he could stir it up. And we quickly outgrew that. Now we've got it 200-gallon holding tanks and a 50-gallon mixer, and can hold up pretty well with that. So we got all the capacity figured out. That stuff we were lucky enough to have a lot of people help us with without spending outside sources. A retired guy from Monsanto that his wife was helping us out said, he said, I could help you out here. And little bits and pieces, he built to where we can do 16,000 bottles in a 7-hour shift, and could double that capacity and go to more shifts. So we figured that part out. The other thing was warehousing. Not enough room with the warehousing. So we rent an old bowling alley down there that got flooded out. And that's our warehouse. And bits and pieces, we figured things out.
So what's next on the horizon? What's the future for
International.
Simply Soothing and Bug Soother?
International. I'm mad at the Midwest right now. They didn't bring all my bugs like I needed them to. Yeah. So it's bigger. I mean, actually we're headed south, and we work with advisory groups too, and that's the other thing. I always need to mention that, because the first connection we got, I worked some with SBDC at one time. Actually worked a SCORE here in Muscatine in the very beginning. And then we went to, somebody suggested we meet up with CIRAS, which is C-I-R-A-S, if anybody's familiar with that, which is I think a I think it's a national program that's handled through Iowa State, but that we found a tremendous amount of help with those guys. When we first met with them, it's kind of interesting, the story, because it was a crazy, frantic, when we were out of, bug spray, and we had, in our parking lot would be Hy-Vee vans and Casey's and Fairway, and I mean, everybody trying to get product because they had long lists. And we met with him up at the city hall, and he said, "We don't put out fires." He said, "I'll see you in the fall." And I said, "Okay." He came back in the fall and started working with us and helping us try to problem solve, how do you project, just a tremendous amount of help. But it was interesting because people saw these, there's 2 days in a row, because we actually had a commercial made for us from some local people called Grass Horse down in Winfield, and we had met with them, and they were kind of dressed up, and then we met with him in a suit that same day, and the rumor was going around we had buyers in there buying the company. So there was lots of rumors around that. It's like, we didn't sell the company. We've even had TV stations call us and say, "Can you confirm the rumor that you've sold the company?" And we always say, "Who'd we sell it to and how much did we get?"
So it's not for sale?
It's not for sale.
All right. Okay, I have a couple of kind of wrap-up questions. So the first is, what would you want other entrepreneurs to learn from your experience?
Well, I think back, had we went to outside people, because there's a lot of advisors available, there's a lot of sources available. Had we went to Cirrus, we eventually hooked up with EDC out of Cedar Rapids, who's another group that does a lot of guiding, but had we done that, I think we could have probably had less problems. I don't know. Would you step back and do anything different? Probably not. It seems like everything we did, we learned on that. We built on our mistakes. And most people that we meet, because we meet people from all over the world at trade shows, that have done all kinds of things. We spend a lot of time networking, like here, with those other people, and they all have similar stories, like ours. Sometimes they're bigger mistakes, sometimes they're less, but it's all similar. The other thing I would do, just exactly what you're doing here, I would network with other people. I would have done that right off the get-go, and because we learn a lot from each other. And I spend a lot of time with the groups out of Cedar Rapids. It's a lot of founders of companies, and a lot of information out there. And it's kind of like I said, it's lonely. It's lonely when you start a business because it's tough. You're trying to. Your family is not always your best supporters because they're afraid, when it's their money and stuff. So being with other like-minded people and trying to get even the enthusiasm from one another, and camaraderie, I really, really enjoy that a lot. I learn a lot from it.
So my last question is two-parter. What's the worst part about being an entrepreneur, and what's the best part?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I put in more hours, and I put way more hours than I ever had in Monsanto, way more hours. I get up early in the morning, and I usually work till late at night because there's always something to do. So it's hard for me to relax anyway because it's challenging, and it's not like work like this is awful kind of work, but it's hard trying to keep a balance. I have grandkids, I have family, I have people that are always upset because they don't see me enough because it just burns up a lot of my energy. But, and then you said the best part of it, the challenges, meeting people. We've been able to travel all over the world. We had a chance to go, we launched in the UK this year. We're able to go over there and help make the stuff and meet. We just meet incredible people all over the world. We love that.
Well, let's wrap this up. Thank you very much. We have, it's after what? 4 months of Startup Grind, we're starting a tradition. Okay, just a simple little thank you plaque. But my favorite quote from Steve Jobs was, I want to just put a ding in the universe. So we like to say thank you for sharing your day.
Thank you, I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having, I love that. Go on my wall.
Awesome. Okay, there's some more food.